performance marketing. Hear it a lot. I'm not sure everybody knows what it means, and probably people have different definitions of it. So how do you, what is performance marketing?
Performance marketing is really where you are and you're making an investment for an outcome. So in the search world, it's pay per click. In the Facebook world, you can optimize for conversion. And the opposite of performance is in this definition is brand marketing, which is more about high broad reach and frequency of a message getting out into the marketplace, something that's measured by impressions versus performance measured by tangible metrics of clicks, conversions, acquisitions, email acquisitions, petition signatures, phone calls coming in through to your phone line. So performance is more outcomes oriented, where brand is more awareness and reach oriented, but still measurable. And I think that's a really important.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So the performance, it seems very, there's so much tech to measure performance marketing. I know all the clicks that happened on this page or whatever it is. I think there's still an issue of this shared attribution question, right? Did people get there from my thing or from this other thing? And who gets credit for bringing somebody down the path, right? Like that's an issue. And then when you talk about brand stuff, it's a little bit harder. I mean, there's the famous advertising saying of, I know that half of my ads work, I just don't know which half. I forgot who said that, somebody famous. And, I think there's something to that too, right? Like that there are things we can't measure, but we have a sense they work because we're getting outcomes.
I think what we're seeing in the brand space is some improvement in measurement, because there has been, and streaming TV is a great example of this, of how we've kind of taken the reach of TV and then overlaid kind of the typical digital targeting. So measurement is still kind of tricky, but I think people are now able to deploy brand advertising with more precision to an audience, so they have more confidence in their investment. And that can happen via, I just launched a campaign yesterday. We still invest in out of home. We still invest in traditional radio. We also invest in digital audio, which allows us to get in front of a particular audience listening to a particular podcast. So you can buy that programmatically, meaning you can follow the audience rather than say, I'm going to buy direct with a show. So there are more opportunities to be precise in your targeting through brand advertising today than there has ever been before. I do think that the entire world got drunk on performance marketing results. That's like the story of all of the DTC companies, the Casper mattresses, Away luggage, et cetera. They all grew. But if you follow, there are some marketing researchers who I follow, Benet and Fields are their names, and they're incredible scholars of marketing and advertising. And they have studied and reported on the ideal blend of performance and brand marketing, and they have shown that the two work best in tandem. Performance marketing, you get little spikes of improvement, but ultimately you can't, there's diminishing returns. You can't scale past a certain point, versus brand is much slower, but when they work together, you see the greatest business effects. So you do need both. People usually will start in the performance world because you can get real-time feedback, and then layer on brand. We actually saw a lot of this during the pandemic. A lot of advertisers that had been these DTC brands that had never advertised on TV took advantage of the lower cost inventory they saw during the pandemic to take dip their toes into the water for the first time with a more broad reaching brand campaign. And that so far it seems to be paying off for those brands. So yeah, a little nerdy there. I'll get a link to their research.
That would be great. We could share a link to their research. There's a question from Joyce about how do you balance privacy needs with tracking and targeting? And how do you think about that? I mean, I think that's also, I'd like you to touch on the fact that with the changes that we're seeing, you talked about programmatic. Does that go away when you don't have third-party cookies? What happens? And I'm not sure everybody understands the difference between first-party data and third-party cookies and all of that. So will you just give us a little quick thing, but also just talk about privacy and how, and we obviously, us, the advertisers, the companies, the stuff, we don't control any of this, right? We don't control any of these platforms. We don't own any of it. So in a way, it's really our choice to use or not use, not how it works.
Yes. These are great questions, and they're issues that we and our partners are grappling with every day. Especially knowing that many of our partners work in the political advocacy space, work in the social impact space. We have a vested interest in personal privacy and in our personal rights. So, the privacy requirements as a consumer feel comforting. As an advertiser, it's a little nerve-wracking because we got used to all this data, and now we're not seeing it come back in the same way. So we are seeing changes. We've noticed we've also noticed a change in cost of reaching audiences on these platforms. They're increasing now. These privacy results were rolled out as the world was coming back to more of a normal media consumption place. So it's hard to tell what's affecting what, but things are getting more expensive. What we've done with our clients is just align around a more narrow set of ideal objectives. For Facebook, for example, they're now only allowing you to have a certain number of conversion events on your account. So it really just is a matter of focusing it a little bit more. We used to measure everything and then receive it and say, okay, what do we do with this? And I think we have to be a little bit more proactive in our approach to measurement rather than reactive to the results we're seeing on screen. Ultimately, I think there will always be a way for us to reach people in an ethical way. We ourselves did not have any partners pull off of Facebook last year during the boycott. We had some quiet down, but especially for smaller associations, foundations, nonprofits, like that is their lifeline. Was their mode of communication during shutdown, during the pandemic, and continues to be their most effective way to reach new and renewed audiences. So we did not see that much of a change. And we are still, on a daily basis, kind of working through how the reporting is changing on these platforms. In terms of cookies, so right now, when we run search advertising, it's all Google. We run Google search, sometimes Bing search, but and essentially there are some workarounds. So there's a new type of server side tracking. So basically, everyone is familiar with retargeting. I would assume most people, if you've shopped online, you're familiar with e-commerce retargeting. You look at a pair of shoes in my instance, and then that pair of shoes shows up across the internet, wherever you are, tracking you. That store didn't have my email address. They are tracking me through the browser and my browser history. So when I was on that page, originally looking at the shoes, and when I left, I'm leaving a trail of cookies, and they're following my path across the internet. First party data would have been, I logged into my Nike account, and they saw I was looking at the shoes, and then they used that to send me an email saying, hey, don't forget, you really like these Jordans, come back and get them, right? So that's an example of using first party data versus the third party, where I haven't given them any information and somehow they know that I want that hat, for example. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that's great.